All right, so I'm here with Jed. We were on a team together. He started off as a Bravo, weapons sergeant, and then he went on to be a Fox, our intelligence sergeant. So now, after Jed got out, did his 20 years, retired, got out and he started this farm. So I guess to start with, just tell me a little bit about growing up and sort of what your youth was like and what might have triggered you to want to join the military.
Well, back then, it just seemed like when you're a kid growing up in a small farm and you're outside all the time and it just all you want to do is just be outside and work. And so that's what we did. I had 12 brothers and sisters total, and so we raised a lot of our own stuff. And it kind of, the patriotic part of it, when you're a kid and not that we even saw a whole bunch of movies and stuff. We didn't have television for a long time, but I always wanted to be a soldier. My initial plan was I would join the Army and do 3 years and go home and milk cows. That was the plan. I had a little herd of cows, and I sold them when I joined the Army. That kind of, as I got into my first 3-year enlistment in the Army, I wasn't very happy with it, but a good friend of mine from my hometown was stationed there with me, and long story short, we decided to re-up and keep going, and then the global war on terror started, and next thing you know, you're at 20 years and retiring.
Man,
so,
yeah.
The very short version of it, but growing up, just being outside all the time, it was a rough life growing up. But I, had lots of brothers and sisters and 2 good parents, so that really helped solidify the upbringing, I think, in my eyes.
Yeah.
So
I guess tell me a little bit about your first few years, doing the regular Army thing.
Well, like I said, I didn't care for the first couple of years too much. I spent my time, I was a 12 Bravo combat engineer, so I was stationed at 307th Engineers at Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division, and spent my first enlistment there. Towards the end of it, a buddy of mine, his brother was a lieutenant in Italy. He went to visit him and said, "Hey, man, we got to do this." So we decided to re-enlist, and we both we re-enlisted for the option to go to Italy, and we went to Italy. So I got to Italy in late 2002, right before the war in Iraq kicked off. Did my initial invasion of Iraq, did a year-long trip there with the 173rd Airborne Brigade out of Italy, and then did a year in Afghanistan. It was during that year in Afghanistan that I decided I wanted to be a Special Forces guy. So.
Yeah. So now going back to being a combat engineer, did the farm upbringing, knowing your way around heavy machinery, did that trigger that at all, or was that just
Great question. Great question. One that my recruiter should be able to answer probably better than I can. When I went to him, I've always loved machinery. Back as far as I can remember, I've always loved machinery and was good at operating it when I was young. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't have anybody to mentor my my entrance into the Army. My dad wasn't in the military and stuff, so I didn't have anybody to really mentor me in that way. And so I said, well, I want to operate heavy equipment in the Army. And so I went to the recruiter, and he's like, man, I've got just a job for you. You can be a combat engineer. Mm-hmm. And engineers in the Army do equipment stuff, and so it's going to be great. He showed me pictures of bucket loaders and dozers, all camo, and ACEs, and the armored vehicle launch bridge, and blah. I was like, man, you're on to something. So what the MOS that I should have been, based on that description of my recruiter back then, was a 62 Echo, and that was a heavy equipment operator. He put me in 12 Bravo. little did I know, 12 Bravo never really sees any heavy equipment unless he begs, borrows, and steals it from somewhere. So
yeah.
But it, growing up on the farm, and once I got into that 12 Bravo field, you do realize that the skills that you brought with you really help a bunch. So, as simple as pounding pickets for defensive obstacles. In terms of defensive obstacles, cutting down trees, digging ditches, stuff like that, being in the woods all the time, growing up on a farm really aided that a bunch.
Yeah.
So, and just, like I say, goes back to the love of the outdoors. Like I was schooled at home. I never went to school other than to take placement tests. So for me, I lived every moment to be outside. And that really translated. It made me what I believe to be a pretty good combat engineer.
Yeah. So, but then going over to SF, you went Bravo and not Charlie. And any reason in particular? Or?
Yep. Thought it through very thoroughly, actually. And of course, as you know, they give you choices, but ultimately they decide. That year in Iraq exposed me to more special types of demolition and destroying stuff, blowing up munitions and vehicles and tanks and stuff, and doing that stuff, but in a way where, like, oh man, we don't have explosives, so what are we going to use for explosives? Well, the Iraqis had a bunch, so we used some of that. And the way to use them, the way to set up these shots, getting rid of a bunch of things, I just was exposed to a lot in that first year. So when I went to selection, I was thinking back on it. I'm like, man, like I love the demo aspect of it, but I've been a demo guy now for 7 years.
Yeah.
Like it's time to broaden your horizons. So I was like, I can bring all that basic demolition knowledge to SF as a former job, and then get trained as something else. Mm-hmm. And I mean, who doesn't want to be a weapons sergeant? Like, what red-blooded American man doesn't want to be a weapons sergeant? So that was my first choice.
Yeah.
And I believe it was followed by an 18 Charlie, and then an 18 Delta. But because they give you the three choice thing. But they gave me my, the three things I wanted when I went to selection. They gave me one of them, and that was being a weapons sergeant.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to Germany and speak German. I wanted to go 10th group and speak German, and well, I got Persian, Farsi, and 5th group, but I got my MOS, so I was pretty happy with that.
1 out of 3, I guess that ain't too bad.
That's, in military terms, it really ain't bad at all. You're lucky you got any of them.
Yeah. Is there anything that stands out from maybe your first few deployments? Like any particular memories you got that you can share?
When they asked me in selection, like, why do you want to be a Green Beret? And I look back to my very first platoon and a bunch of us showing up, all E1 and E2 privates. And I mean, that platoon, you were never alone. I mean, ever. Like, if you went somewhere, you rolled in force. Like, dudes we're all young, nobody had girlfriends. I mean, it was just, like, we were just a tight-knit bunch of dudes that were jacked up on jump wings and booze. Like, I mean, we ran fast. We didn't know jack. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you look back as a senior guy, and especially once you get into the special operations side, you look back at what you knew when you were 20, and you're like, man, I thought I was awesome, but really, like, barely knew enough to make myself dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
But when what I took from those first 4 years, to span training deployments and combat deployments, was that I had found what I was missing from that first platoon, and that would be my best memory, really. Was without naming all the dudes, the guys that were on the team during that time, we had a really close team, a really good and really close team. And so I had found what I came to Special Forces to find in that team.
Yeah.
And that was pretty impressive to me, and not all teams are like that. Some are and some aren't. I got lucky enough to be on one of those teams where, people came together and everybody's really tight. Like, and, part of that is fostered by excuse me, the team sergeant and stuff, and but we had it, and it was really good. Like that spanned that whole 4-year time period, really. And then, you know, guys start spending a few years on teams, and they get sliced out to go here and there. And
so sort of along those lines, can you talk a little bit about you know, the trip that you took with the Marines? You know, without giving away too much. You know, especially like, you know, one thing that you mentioned the other day was, you know, being around SF guys, doing the SF guy thing all the time, you don't really notice it. And then you get to a more conventional unit who aren't, you know, they're not looking at problems the same way. You know, really seeing, you know, having a better view of the value of the SF guy when you're the only SF guy around.
It's, yeah, like, you know, we talked about it. There's a lot to be said for that. I had it, I'll be the first to say, and I kicked and fought and screamed not to do that trip when it was handed to me. But I'll tell you, at the end of that trip, I learned a lot, and I thoroughly enjoyed the entire trip. Mm-hmm. Of course, I learned a bunch of things I'll never use again, but you know, it makes you a better whole person as a result. But to highlight on that one particular aspect of the value that an SF guy can bring, you know, we're billed as a force enabler, whether that be through, you know, partner forces or different indigenous forces or whatever, or our own, you know, our own conventional counterparts. It really, like I was telling you, it really highlighted the fact that, you know, at that point, that's 2016 and 17. At that point, I've been in SF a while, been in the military a long time at that point, but I had been removed from the big Army for quite some time. So you get really used to the way that SF operates, and there's a lot more almost handshake type stuff going on at the lower levels. And so working with the conventional counterpart, both the Navy and the Marine Corps, was a shock. Forced you to navigate, you know, command structures and staffs, and in the fulfillment of your mission, trying to work and use the assets that these different services brought to the fight, and getting through all the processes that they routinely use was a big step. It really highlighted the fact that, man, there's a lot of value to one of us if you put us with a conventional unit in an environment that we're used to operating in. You know, at that time, I've been in and out of the Middle East for, 13 years? Yeah. So, and routinely, I mean, very few breaks. So, you know, when you bring that kind of just institutional knowledge and the way things work there, and the way to fill supply requests, and using indigenous forces to help us accomplish our mission and stuff, was a concept that they, you know, maybe had considered at some point, but had never really, never had to put into action, you know. They just never had to use it, where we routinely use it all the time, and it made for a much smoother mission set on their side, just having a couple of us around. There's myself and a communications guy. Yeah. And boy, that really, and they were awesome to work with, building that. You know, we stressed the relationship part pretty heavily from the Green Beret side, and I can tell you that if you put the time into working with your conventional counterparts from whatever service and show them the value that you can provide, most of them are very receptive to your input and enabling them to do their mission better. Yeah. All right. So, was that your last deployment, that one, or? No, I came back and did one more deployment on the team, okay, and then started the retirement process. I guess I was about 19 and a half years or so when I got back from my last one. Okay. And I made the decision at that point to retire, and started the retirement process. Also not an easy process. Well, anyway. Now, had you already bought the farm at that point? I'd owned it. When I made that decision, I'd owned it already for 4 years.
Okay.
So 3.5 to 4 years. So it was already well on its way, and part of the information that drove that decision, or the requirements that drove that retirement decision, was the farm had come to the point where I either needed to be home to run it, or I had to pay someone to do it.
Yeah, I think this is like, you know, a lot of guys, I think especially in the military, think about that, like, you know, just, you know, get done their commitment, you know, small farm, huge farm, either way, be able to be self-sufficient, and you know, not have to rely on somebody else. And the more, you know, if you can get your food yourself, if you can do all that stuff yourself, then, you know, you can be much more self-sufficient. You can have a nice, easy or hard, whichever way you want to look at it.
Whichever way you want to look at it.
You know, at least you're not working for the man, right?
Not working for the man. But I'll tell you, this man is probably a lot more demanding than most of the men are.
Oh, yeah.
I probably actually screwed myself there. But, yeah, you know, and I'll digress for a quick second into the fact that, you know, we get into the PTSD stuff and depression and all that kind of stuff that a lot of vets suffer with when they come home. I think that also drives a lot of this stuff, you know, like why guys look to not be stuck in traffic every day and not be around the things that may give them troubles and stuff like that. In my opinion, this is a great venue to help reduce some of those effects. Let's talk about the male ego just for a second. It's, you know, most men want to feel like a provider. You know, that ego needs some stoking. You got to feed that ego a little bit. So at the end of the day, when you can look back, instead of looking at your computer screen, like scrolling through 73 files and like, man, I didn't even change like 10 of those today. Like at the end of the day, yeah, you're tuckered out and you're done. But you can look out and almost every day, there's something monumental that you can look at and say, and there's something physically there.
Yeah.
Like, I accomplished something. I put fly tags in cows. I disked some ground. I moved some hay rolls. Whatever I did, I can look at the end of the day and be like, yep, buddy, that's me, you know?
You know,
that's that ego.
Yeah. You know, again, going back to something you said when you were showing me around, you know, just, you know, the way we describe it sometimes is, you know, just doing the SF guy thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, so how has that worked out for you as far as like, you know, running the farm and then making, you know, making connections within the town to help with running the farm?
It's huge. I couldn't do what I do farming without the help or the at least passive support of a whole bunch of people in this community. I really couldn't. It's, you know, that SF guy thing you're describing is building and maintaining relationships with humans. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. And being in SF and having to use those overseas and within your own community for so long, it shows you the value of building and maintaining that relationship. Mm-hmm. It's really what it is. It's, you know, it's building and maintaining it. You have to do it. I wouldn't have the reach, and I wouldn't be able to run the animals and stuff that I can and do without the support of people around me. And getting to know those people and learning, you know, what they need or what they want, how I can help them, and what I need or I want and how they can help me. Just getting out and building those relationships. And, you know, this is a small town, a real small town. And when you first move here, you've got a hill to climb, a big one. And I'll tell you that a lot of the folks around here respect the fact that if somebody's where they're going to say they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and if you're respectful and you just work really hard, those are things that they've come to respect over their lifetimes, and it doesn't change. Like if you can fill those bills and be decent to folks, that SF guy thing, build and maintain relationships. It took time, moving to a new community and getting out. I mean, I go out and cold call people, on a Sunday afternoon, just, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm your neighbor that lives over here. I bought this guy's old farm, and sometimes I'd be there 2 hours. But that's evolved into the relationships and stuff I have with all those folks today, and I couldn't do what I do without all of them.
Yeah.
The amount of capital it takes to just get what I own now is nowhere near what it would take to actually physically own all the property that I farm.
Yeah.
Now a lot of those people, some of them are getting older, they can't maintain it anymore, they don't farm it anymore, want help paying taxes or whatever the case may be. Every landowner is different, and building and maintaining that relationship and understanding what they need to get out of it and what you need to get out of it is vital.
Yeah.
I would say that's a skill that a Green Beret should be good at, because that's what he's done for his career. And if he hasn't, he's lacking. Use that skill a lot.
All right. So I guess from there, what's next? What's next for Jed and Louise Bluff Farms?
Well, we're going to keep expanding for now. I bought this old farm, right? It's old. It needed a ton of work. Fences, fields, pastures, everything just needed a bunch of work. So we're working on it. Some of these leased land things have allowed me to grow faster than what I could have otherwise, because some of the infrastructure was already there. It didn't need as much repair as what mine did. So, thanks to all those folks that have worked with me, For now, this place in 2 years will all be fenced except that bottom where the millets at down there. So everything else will be fenced, and it'll just be cattle on the upper land part of this place. I talked to you about like an intensive management system and how it could pay off in terms of moving your grazing around and feeding some of different stuff like the haylage and different things. I'm gonna kind of enact more of those procedures and stuff going forward to help me grow and feed cattle more efficiently with less inputs from other sources. I'll do it mostly myself. I see for the near future kind of a split between traditional cow-calf guy and trying to take advantage somewhat of the new market. And it's not that it's a new market, but in the scope that we're looking at it, it's a new market in terms of getting, more individuals interested in purchasing either meat from the local farm or just purchasing the amount of it. Say it's cheaper to buy it as a whole or a quarter or a half or whatever. Talking those folks into trying it, like, hey, try the meat, you like it? Hey, how about you buy 110 pounds of it at a time? I'll cut you a deal on it. Helps me, I don't have to store that meat. I don't have a revolving door of people coming out to my farm looking to buy 3 steaks. And they don't have to go to the grocery store for meat, it's in the freezer. Yeah. So, long story short, I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Near future.
All right. So, Jed, this has been eye-opening for me to come out here. It's been a blast the last few days. Just seeing all the work that you've done. Everything you've done from. I know, like, there were way more trees here. You way less pasture. You reclaimed that from. You reclaimed that. So the amount of work that you've put in is just blowing my mind, and the knowledge you've built on like all this science behind this has just been eye-opening. So you got any parting words here?
Man, I appreciate you coming down. It's been great to see you, and I appreciate the opportunity to just talk and share about it. I said all the things that you've heard over the last 3 days run in my head 24/7.
Yeah.
So good to get them out sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's been a blast, and if there's anybody out there that is serious about wanting to, just wanting to break into this, come see me.
Yeah.
Because the younger you start, at least from the planning perspective, the younger you start, the better off you're going to be. I told you I couldn't have done it without a bunch of help from people 12, 14 years ago, and I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I just need to be in the room with smart people.
Yeah.
And so if you do that, open your eyes, open your ears, listen, and be willing to learn.
Yeah.
Joel always said it. He's like, man, you're going to go to a school and you're going to think that, that technique that guy's showing you just ain't going to be worth the crap. But he's like, you know what? Give it the due diligence while you're here. You might leave, you may take 5% of that would make you a 5% better operator on the other end. 5% is significant.
Yeah.
So if you think about that and don't discount anything just because it looks a little weird or, whatever, don't discount it. Give it its due diligence and go on with it. If you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah.
You got to try it. So start early, plan, and start early. That's the best advice I can give.
Cool.
So, man, it has
right,
been
man.
great to see you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be able to
You
do
too.
this,
It's
and
been awesome.
hope we get to do it again.
Yeah.
So.
Plan on it. Maybe next time I'll keep you mic'd up all day. We'll do a day in the life or something like that.
Oh man, I'm down. I feel sorry for the people on your YouTube channel.